Support for podcasts comes from Milwaukee School of Engineering Center for Professional Education, offering courses in AI machine learning, project management, and more. Program information at msoe.edu/CPE.
Lake Effect brings you conversations about what's happening in Milwaukee and the people, places, and organizations that shape the community. This is Lake Effect Spotlight from WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR.
Just around 10% of students in Milwaukee Public Schools can read at grade level. But a new literacy plan by the school district promises to change how students learn to read. The plan comes in response to new state legislation called Act 20 that requires districts to use science-based reading instruction. WUWM education reporter Katherine Kokal is looking into literacy in her series called Turning the Page, Teaching Milwaukee to Read. She talked with Ana Gabriela Bell Jiménez, the Academic Superintendent for Literacy at MPS, and Jennifer Mims-Howell, the district's Chief Academic Officer. In their conversation, they'll reference the district's new teacher training program called Letters.
We find ourselves in a historical time in the United States in relationship to public education and academic achievement for reading. So in 2023, Wisconsin passed on legislation to create assurances that students were receiving daily instruction that was aligned to what we now know to be the science of reading. And this was in response of understanding that nationally, academic achievement for reading is extraordinarily low. It's very, very low, right? So I say that we are in a historical time because since 2023, we have been protected by legislation to create that assurance that daily instruction is delivered using materials that are of high quality, that are aligned to standards, and that we're using pedagogies that are aligned to the way in which the human brain learns how to read and write. And that sounds like something that is very logical. Like, of course, it would make sense for us to be able to do all of those things. But the fact of the matter is that historically we have, and I say we because I've been a licensed teacher for more than 20 years. And when I received my initial training, the pedagogies that I was taught and I was expected to use are now debunked, and they're not aligned to the way in which the brain needs to learn how to read and write. So it's a beautiful opportunity, and it's a grand opportunity because it requires for all of us to be able to be re-enamored with teaching, because teachers want to feel successful. Teachers want for their students the same thing that they want for their own children, and that is for them to have access to options and choices. And a big part of that comes from being able to read and write.
One of the things I think I want to make sure we talk about is about 91% of students who are not reading on grade level. We need to change that narrative for the students of Milwaukee Public Schools. And so in looking at how we train our teachers using the science of reading and also the high quality instruction materials that we have, we knew we had to make some things look different for our students, but also for the practitioners who are working with our students. And so since Act 20 was something that Wisconsin had to do, Milwaukee Public School teachers had to be trained, we wanted to make sure people had the tools to do the work, but also know what to do with the tools. And so they needed instructions. And so we've been rolling things out a little bit differently this year, where in the past people had things as they were preparing their lesson plans, they could prepare them for the whole year if they wanted to. We're taking a different approach now. We're giving them bite-sized modules. So we're giving them 3 to 4 weeks at a time so that they remain present in what they're doing with the students. They're using some of the tools that they just recently learned in professional development. And then at our professional developments that we're having that are half-day professional development this year that the board gave us permission to have, we are showing those teachers how to use the tools from Letters and also the high-quality instruction materials to deliver what the students need as they work with them in the classrooms.
I have a few follow-up questions on that, but first, Dr. Bell Jiménez, what framework did you use to teach young students to read that you mentioned is defunct? Were you using the whole language program?
Yes, in 1999 and in the 2000s, the vast majority of the teacher preparation programs pointed us into a balanced literacy framework. And I, as many other teachers, were looking for answers. And when you're looking for answers, you will knock on everyone's door and you're going to try all the things until you're able to find a solution. And what I found as a practitioner really early in my career was that even though I was working really, really hard, my students were not becoming literate. They were not becoming literate. So I moved really quickly from being a novice teacher into being a teacher that was looking for a master's degree in reading.
So why is letters training the answer to this? My understanding of whole word language theory is that it was a curriculum that encouraged students to use context clues and fill in words in a way that valued things like phonics and syllable learning a little less. That's a very simplistic overview. But feel free to expand on that. But then I'd like to know why letters training is the answer. What makes it different that means it will work in our school district?
So letters is a professional development opportunity. So it is not a curriculum. What is important to consider when we're talking about the science of reading and the pedagogies that are framed in the professional development that is letters is that all of the pedagogies are substantiated by research. And it can be neuroscience, it can be experimental and quasi-experimental research with a control and an experimental group. So we have a sense of assurance that the way in which we are engaging in instruction will result in a student's learning. Does that answer your question?
It does, yeah. The word blame is bad, but I think a lot of school districts have been grappling with this in the last several years, that the way that they were teaching students how to read wasn't working. And in a sense, a generation of students has not been served through this. I know that MPS is very forward-looking in all of this, but how do you grapple with ways that your predecessors have failed to do this?
I think one of the ways is we're taking a different approach. I think we agree with you. There is no blame. What happened, happened, but we were doing it based on what we knew, as Dr. Bell Jiménez said, as teachers, what we were taught, the ways we were taught for whole language. But we also knew that there was always a space for teachers to add some creativity in there. We know all students need differentiated types of learning. So we knew that we had to make things look different for students with disabilities, students who were English language learners, and then students who, showed that they were gifted, had some gifted and talented skills as well. So we've been differentiating for a long time. And we also know not one thing works for all students. And so as we look at the science of reading, we are looking at what works for the brain of a young child versus the type of student that we're talking about, or making the differentiation in the type of curriculum we're using or the modifications to what we're using. So I think our approach is a little bit different. But then we also think about how we are training our teachers. We realize we can't just continue to give them everything at once. We have to let them know that the high quality district adopted instructional materials is the expectation of what will be used in our school district. So we've been really looking at the materials that we're giving teachers, and we realize we can't give them everything at once because they're learning it new, just like their new students are learning each year they come in at the beginning of a year. We knew we had to go slow to go fast. We know we have some advanced learners out there too. So we know we also have to keep them engaged and keep them feeling like they want to continue to interact with us and keep them engaged in what's next and what's coming, keep them hungry for the next steps. And so how we're rolling things out is a little bit different as well. So we are definitely looking forward, as you said before, because we know that some of the approaches that we're taking will benefit our students. Sometimes it's going to be a little bit harder with some teachers than with other teachers. We know that some of our very seasoned teachers have the way that they were trained, and that's the only way. But we also know that there's some teachers who are coming in raring to go, some brand new teachers with ideas and things like that will help us promote the activities through the science of reading that we're going to work on to do in Milwaukee Public Schools with the materials that we have adopted.
Well, thank you. That is so well encapsulating where we go from here, right? We just scratched the surface here. And so knowing that this is 30,000-foot view, is there anything that we didn't talk about that you think is really important for people to know about this or to remember as things change at their child's school?
think you just said it. Things are going to change at their child's school. We have been, getting concerns from constituents about things that are happening in the schools that look a little bit different. We need a little bit of grace right now. We need a little bit of grace. I think we have to, let the community know that we're going to be as transparent as possible, through the messages of our superintendent. And when we ask for input and when we hold community sessions, we want people to come out and give us input. We don't only want them coming to the board meetings, but we want them to show up at their child's school for parent-teacher conferences. We want constant communication with that child's teacher and talking about what's going on in that school community with that school leader. We want to make sure that the culture and climate and the environment is set for learning so that our kids have an opportunity to learn.
That was Jennifer Mims-Howell, the Chief Academic Officer for Milwaukee Public Schools, and Ana Gabriela Bell Jiménez, the Academic Superintendent for Literacy at MPS. They both joined WUWM education reporter Katherine Kokal, whose literacy series called Turning the Page continues Monday on Morning Edition.
You can find more interviews like this one by visiting wuwm.com/Lake Effect. And while you're there, subscribe to the Lake Effect Spotlight podcast.